Nataswisnanwita, ka Kitty Hendricks, New Tomas, Mississippi.
My name is Linda Jeffers Coombs, Aquina Wampanoag tribe, Mashpee resident.
Hi, I'm Stephen Peters. I am a citizen of the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, and I live here in Mashpee as well with my family.
My name is Robert Peters. I'm a Mashpee Wampanoag artist, writer.
I'm Miles Bernadette Peters. I live here in Mashpee, Massachusetts. I'm a member of the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe.
My name is Danielle Hill, and I am also called Running Water, and I'm from Mashpee.
Thanksgiving is essentially a product of America becoming the country that it is now, which was formed at the expense of Wampanoag and Native people. Because for America to happen and for people to give thanks for this holiday, America had to change, remove, kill, ship out of the country Native people to make that happen.
So Thanksgiving is certainly it's a confusing time to be Wampanoag, because on one hand you've got a long weekend with no work, and there's nothing to do other than be with family and eat food and watch football and watch a parade. And on the other hand, as you start to grow up, you learn the history of your tribe and your people and what they endured. We're not sitting around giving thanks that the Pilgrims had this bountiful harvest and really marked the beginning of the end of our people. But instead, we're really giving thanks for our people's perseverance in being able to overcome all of those obstacles so that we could be here today.
You wouldn't even think of really trying to go back on that tradition of families getting together. But that was my people that it's about. It's kind of participating in an insult to have that. And I think there's an awareness from anybody that's native that brings the turkey out and puts it in the middle of the table. It's like I'm being the butt of a joke.
Thanksgiving for me is it's a day really when, just like everybody else, we get together and eat and gather and come together as a family. The true meaning behind Thanksgiving is the giving of thanks. And I try to, every time I'm out with these children, we do morning ceremonies, go to sunrise ceremonies and give thanks and give our prayers to the fire with tobacco and try to really let them know that to be thankful for the things around them. And it's not just during Thanksgiving is the thing. It's not it's, oh, yep, Thanksgiving's coming up. You guys better be thankful for something. No, it's an everyday thing for us.
The myth of Thanksgiving, it's very damaging. It's damaging to Native people because it's not true, and other people believe it. And when we go to explain the actual history or the events that happened during that time period in the early 17th century when the harvest event that became known as the first Thanksgiving happened, when we go to explain about that, we get challenged, we get pushback. So it's very frustrating, it can be angering, it's insulting, and I also think it's damaging for non-Native people because they're believing a lie.
So the myth of Thanksgiving really, has been tossed around and utilized across the United States to really show that it was a happy, grand experience and, really to justify a lot of the taking of our lands and the, utilization of our resources and the, a lot of the wrongdoings that have been done, and it brushes those off and sort of plays everything out to be, a happy family event that, is now perpetuated. And this myth is shown in schools and, all around the United States during this time of year. And as an Indigenous person, it's really, disheartening to see, people celebrating this Thanksgiving and not really giving thanks in the same way that Thanksgiving was brought about.
The fact is that, yes, two groups of people did come together and they feasted for 3 days. The other sort of narrative about the happiness and the happily ever after, that is definitely fabricated, or it hasn't been proven. We don't really know what the circumstances were.
The myth created around Thanksgiving has done great harm to Native Americans and our place in this country, and our perception and how historically it's taught, that the Pilgrims came together and we all sat around and had a big feast, is not accurate. And it's hurtful and harmful to think that this very important pivotal time for Native people is completely overlooked in American society. And it's not addressed in our school systems, and it's the type of history, there's certain people that don't want taught.
So many people don't know who Wampanoag people are, and now that they do know, well, then we have just one role in history, and that is because we didn't let the Pilgrims die. We helped them to survive.
It marks this beginning of a dark period in history for the Wampanoag people. And it's a history that is just completely ignored. It didn't align with what was needed when sort of the Thanksgiving holiday was created after the Civil War. And so it instead just gets pushed aside, and it's ignored. And as a Native American, that's a painful thing. You don't want to think that your history and your people are being ignored, but that's exactly what has happened.
The foods that have become traditional for Thanksgiving, most of it is traditional Wampanoag food. Turkey, corn, green beans, squash, pumpkin, cranberries. So I don't have a problem with a turkey dinner, because that meal, or those foods anyway, have also been co-opted out of, our Wampanoag culture and into the mainstream.
It's more than just turkey. We had, of course, everything. We're still clamming because we can clam all year long. We had a lot of clams and duck because the ducks are migrating that time of year. So ducks and geese were part of the meals, which went on for days and days. Also deer, of course. It's the beginning of the deer season. So there'd be a lot of roasted deer meat, roasted corn cakes, roasted right in the fire. Just the seasonal fruit, which is the cranberry, sasamaniash. So we'd have lots of breads and corn ground together with nut meats. So we made some really flavorful dishes like an oatmeal. And that's called nasomp. And we would have that as well, where you could just dip the duck meat and all the delicious the gravy from the duck meat into the nasomp.
One way that we can celebrate Thanksgiving in a traditional Indigenous way, whether you're Native or non-Native, is by eating those same foods and honoring those foods. Thanksgiving is about the food. It's about enjoying your harvest, and it's about abundance when you're entering a time where, the earth starts to fall asleep and when things start to get cold. And so it's about really filling your belly and eating and enjoying those delicious, nutritious foods with friends and family. In 2020, I will say a very practical way to honor those food traditions is by using your dollars. There are many, many Native food companies out there. They are producing and shipping nationally and internationally all your smoked salmons, all of your berries, all of your wild rice, your corn, pretty much anything you can think of, there is a native company that is producing those foods. I would suggest that people buy those foods and cook them and eat them at your Thanksgiving meal. That's one way to indigenize Thanksgiving.
We have everybody in the country celebrating this in a way that isn't true to the history. They're not telling the truth about the history of what happened and how it happened. The truth of the matter is, before they got here, there was a pandemic that killed almost 500,000 people. And when they got here, they didn't respect our sovereignty on our own land, and to this day have not respected our sovereignty on our own land. And we have degrees of sovereignty, but no native really has sovereignty in America.
The only thing that's in the colonial record about the first Thanksgiving, or rather I should say the event that came to be known as the first Thanksgiving, is a small inclusion in Mort's Relation, or whichever volume it's in. It's like one long page of Mort relating all of this stuff that was going on, and he gets to the part where he's talking about the governor sent 4 men on fowling, and Massasoit came amongst us with 90 men, and they stayed and feasted and played games for 3 days. That little section, that's all there is in reference to what has become the hoopla of the first Thanksgiving.
We had several Thanksgivings. We gave thanks every day for what was put here for us. So, of course, we give thanks for things that sustain the life, your life and your family's life, and people, everybody that came before us. And but there were big celebrations, like big community celebrations for the green corn, right? Because the corn is is our staple, is our life sustainer, along with the beans and the squash. So we would give thanks for the green corn harvest. And it was really a time where a lot of the work was done. So it was a time where there was a lot of rejoicing and lots of singing and dancing. Games were played, honor games.
Really what's most important about, Thanksgiving is, understanding the indigenous perspective on Thanksgiving, and really, thinking back to what the indigenous people did for the pilgrims, what they really provided. They gave them safe harbor, they gave them a place to stay, they gave them, the ability to live and thrive. I think a lot of the disappointment, about Thanksgiving was brought on by a lot of the things that happened after the first Thanksgiving. But the histories aren't as important to me as like being able to raise these children in a world where they don't feel hurt or broken down by the masses of people who misunderstand Thanksgiving and don't really understand that there's indigenous people who've had, since Thanksgiving, had a long history of people not following that tradition. And what I would have to say to people in the United States is that, to follow the meaning of Thanksgiving is to be thankful, to be respectful, to be caring for other people, to be giving, and not just to you and your own, not just to you and your family, but to strangers, to homeless people, to people that have nothing, people that are just trying to survive. That's what the indigenous people did for the newcomers, the people who came across the sea on the ships. They provided them food and safety and knowledge and understanding and everything that they could to help them live and thrive.
One of the things that people are most surprised of is that we do sit down and have a dinner very similar to everyone else's dinner on that day. What we do prior to that is probably a little bit different. And, we do remember everything that happened in the past.